Before I dive into today's review, let me start by saying this. Thank you so much for the support lately. It's been crazy. I don't even know how to process any of this. I did not even expect to reach the next milestone so soon, and I appreciate every single one of you for tuning into my videos and giving them a chance. I will try to stay consistent with my content going forward as I've been for the last 7 months now, and it has been really fun being able to make these videos and just talk about action figures. Whether it's DC, Marvel, or anime figures that I do collect as well. It's just fun to be able to share my passion for this hobby, and I hope many of you stick around for more content to come in the future. And with all that said, let's dive into today's review. We are looking at Red Tornado. Now, before I talk about the accessories and, of course, the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card that is included to find out who Red Tornado is as a character. And as you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of Red Tornado front and center. In the background, there are all these other androids that kind of look like Red Tornado in different colors, which is pretty freaking crazy. Okay. His real name is John Smith, and it reads, Red Tornado was constructed by Thomas Oscar Morrow to counteract the superheroes who interfered in his schemes. However, the android's frame was possessed by a wandering wind elemental and achieved unanticipated power and sentience. Joining the Justice League, Reddy enjoyed friendship and loyalty. He took on the human identity John Smith, married Kathy Sutton, and adopted a young orphan, Treya. He has been destroyed and reconstructed repeatedly with varying degrees of success, leading to serious impairment of function. Interesting. I've seen this character in many of the cartoons because he's always appeared in the background. Sometimes he has like a little bit of like a moment where he does talk. And in most depictions, he's just an android, right? His powers have always been interesting because he just summons like tornadoes, which some people might think is kind of stupid, but honestly, I find it pretty cool. I like characters with wind abilities. I mean, like, it's kind of OP if they know how to use it properly. So, yeah. He's always been one of those characters that I've seen countless times, and I'm like, I wonder why he's always there. Like, they just love having him in the background, but they never really gave him like his big moment. I think Young Justice had an episode where he kind of had like a big moment where he fought this other enemy guy that used wind powers or something. I don't remember, but yeah, he barely gets like these crazy big moments in the show, which I think is kind of unfortunate because I think he's a really cool character, even for an android. So, all right. With all that said, let's talk about the accessories that he does include. Let's start with the interchangeable hands. Let me zoom in really quickly. As you can see, he does have his fist hands, which is pretty good that they gave him those. So he has two of them. And he also comes with what I call the open gesture hands, otherwise known as the flight hands. And these hands work well with this figure because if you've seen the cartoons, you've seen how he summons his tornadoes. He always has his hand open like this. Or sometimes when he's flying, he has his hands kind of like, open and facing downward so he can shoot tornadoes up so then it can allow him to fly. So these hand gestures make sense for this figure. And if you're wondering, does he come with a tornado effect piece? He does come with one. It is the same one that they use for the Cyclone figure from the Black Adam movie. I don't remember which figure came out first that introduced this particular accessory, but this is a repaint of the one that came with Cyclone. And it's also a figure stand in some ways because, as you can see inside, there is this little peg right there that's meant to go on his feet. So if you want him to kind of look like he's levitating inside a funnel of wind, you can recreate that pose. Kinda. It's not the best. And I will show what he looks like in this sort of base stand later in the video. And that's basically all the accessories that he comes with. Of course, he does come with the regular DC stand, but, that's always included with these figures. I would have preferred if he came with a flight stand because it would make more sense, because there's a character that can fly. So, but it is what it is. All right, let's talk about the figure. I like how simplistic this looks, because this is exactly what Red Tornado looks all the time. He always has these three colors. It's gold, red, and blue. And in some depictions, he has yellow, but it doesn't really matter because it's still kind of like a similar color to me. So I do like that it's always just these three colors. And, for this figure, I don't blame them for making it very simplistic, because, that's what the character looks like. So, they nailed the colors and all that correctly. And for his head sculpt, let's talk about this first, because I find this very interesting. In most depictions I've seen of this character, he's always had a more sort of android-looking face sculpt. This is the first time I've seen him look very human-like in terms of his face. Yeah, this is like the first time I've seen this, because I think it was in Justice League, the animated series, and also even in Young Justice, his eyes were never like this sort of color or shape. It was always very like rectangular, and even his nose looked very rectangular, and his mouth was just like the usual robot sort of mouth. This is like very humanoid looking, which I think was exactly what they were trying to do here, because it does represent the goal of this character. He wanted to be human. He developed sentience, and he wanted to understand what humans are like. He wanted to live the life of a human. So it is a very nice touch that they went with this face sculpt, where he's very humanoid looking more than his android face sculpt, because it does capture this character's sort of goal, where when he's not a superhero, he wants to live the human life. And it's very sci-fi, because in many sci-fi movies, there's always these sort of plots where AI robots who are viewed as like the villains, you find out that the whole time they were trying to be us. They want to know what humans are like. So it's kind of similar to this character, but I guess the only difference is that he doesn't, do what those crazy AI robots in those movies do, right? So, yeah. I like the arrow on his head. It does remind me of Aang from Avatar. So, if you ever seen that show, right? I like the fact that he has this sort of cape that he wears. Now, this figure mold is not a new figure mold. This is a reuse of another figure that we looked at before in the past, and I will bring that figure in later. And I like the way that the T is done here in the middle for Tornado. It's pretty simple. Now, this figure does have a little bit of QC issues that I've noticed when I found this figure in the store, and I saw a couple of them. Even though the gold paint looks nice because it's a little bit shiny, you can see that there is a little bit of like red splotches of paint QC that are just like on this surface, which kind of sucks. But, that comes with its territory when you do stuff like this. So it's something that's expected. But nevertheless, it's not too visible. So, I don't really mind it. And on the arms, he does have more of this sort of gold paint that is there. It's also on his legs, as you can see. It goes down to his like boots down here, right? And I like the part right here where it's all gold, because there's a contrast. They could have easily just kept this, flat. But I think... Okay, this doesn't have a photo of what his legs look like. I was looking at the, the photo on the card. But, yeah, I don't know if the bottom of his legs ever had any sort of contrast. I don't remember. But in this case, I do like the fact that there is some sort of divider, because it does make it look like he's wearing boots, even though I don't think he does. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh, this is just like a lazy reuse of a body buck. But in this way, the way they did it down here works. Like, at least it's not a lazy sort of repaint. They could have just painted this all red. They could have. But they did not, which I like the fact that they did not paint it all red, because that would have made this even worse. So, making it look like he's wearing boots of some kind of works. And he also has that sort of gold pattern go down all the way to his feet down here. So, Really cool. His belt is also all gold. And is there any details on the back of him? No, there's no details back here. But it does wrap around the gold part of his belt, and of course these little, whatever you want to call these. Yeah, so the way that they applied the gold paint actually works. And in terms of his cape, it is like a very simplistic looking blue. I like the fact that it is a bright blue, and there are like these little red highlights, kind of like these borders on the side here, which also adds a nice touch to give it a contrast. So, I like that they did that. They didn't have to. In most cases, sometimes these companies don't even do stuff like this, but the fact that they did to make it some sort of like contrasting on it actually makes this figure stand out even better. So for a very simplistic looking figure, because there's not much details on here, I think it came out okay. And that's pretty much all the aesthetics on this figure that I can talk about, because there's really nothing else to say about it. I think it gets the job done. It's exactly what Red Tornado looks like in the comics. So, they did good. Okay, let's talk about articulation. Since this is the same body buck, let's see. He can look up. That's not bad. So if you want to get him into flight poses, you can. He can kind of look down. Not exactly the best, but if you do lean him forward, I think, yeah, you can probably get him to look down. So that's pretty good. As for his arms, they can go into a T-pose. They can swing forward. They can't exactly swing back because, the cape here does hinder the articulation there. So going back is not going to be, the best. As for his arms, he does have the bicep swivel up here. He does have the double jointed, so that's good. He also has swivel in the hands and articulation in the wrists. And there's also a swivel with the joint in the wrists, so that's pretty good. As for his torso, he does have upper movement here. He does lean forward. Not exactly the best, unfortunately. So there's that. But he can lean back. And again, do some sort of modification for this guy. I recommend it because the fact that they can't lean forward is a problem. And I feel like this is like a running issue with a lot of Mcfarlane figures, is that some figures can lean forward and backwards, but some figures can't. And it's such a weird thing. I don't know why they don't ever keep it consistent. It's really strange. And for his waist, there is like really good movement down here. Look at that. It can lean forward, kinda, right? Nah, not the best. But can lean back? Oh, he can lean back. We got the giant gap right there. So leaning back is not a problem for this figure. It's leaning forward that is not the fun part. And then for his legs, he can do almost a full-on split. That's pretty freaking good. I like that. Okay, so he can do that. And he can kick out really good too. So if you want to get him into like a kick pose, you can. So, because this piece right here is really freaking soft, but it allows for him to kick out really, really good. I like that. I like when figures can actually kick their legs out because, some of the figures we looked at recently for DC Multiverse, or just DC figures in general, have not been able to kick out their legs well, which is never a good thing. So, and of course he has the double jointed, as I just showed, and he has articulation down here in the feet, and swivel up there, and of course toe articulation. And yeah, standard articulation on most DC Multiverse figures. No upper thigh swivel. That is the unfortunate part. And that is basically all the articulation on this figure. Now, let me just get him posed up into this thing. So bear with me as I try to work through this. I'm going to try to get him onto that base stand. And let me see if I can swap these hands. This is always the part that's tricky because, I'm not good at doing this stuff on camera. It's like the first time I've been doing this a lot lately, actually. And I kind of enjoy this segment of the video. Okay, come on. His fist hands are actually very hard to take off sometimes, but, they're doable. Okay, get that hand on there. There we go. Let's see. See if I can get him into this pose now. So this is where it gets really freaking tricky, because you have to somehow balance him inside that peg. And I think the worst part about this is that it just feels like it's not meant for this figure, or it's just not. Well, I'm not saying it's not meant for this figure. I'm saying it's not. It's just not executed right, in my opinion. Okay. Okay, you just push it in there. Do you see what I'm doing? Okay, there we go. I hope that shows what I'm talking about. So yeah, you can get them in there into some sort of like pose, right? Like, you see that? It works, kinda. Not the best, but I mean, at least they included this effect so that you can have them displayed this way if you want to. So that's like a nice thing that they did, but I think the execution is just not the best, because over time, he will kind of tip to the side because it just doesn't really balance correctly. So, okay, that is basically what he looks like on here. So you can have him like on your shelf like this, you know, or use it for like an effect piece where it looks like he's flying, but not really, because if he was flying, this should be a lot longer. So, but execution wise, not the best, but it's okay. All right, it's all right. Let's just put it that way. At least they tried. So, okay, now let's do some comparisons. Let's bring in some other figures. Come on, Stan. Why do you always not want to stand whenever I need you to? Okay, there we go. Okay, don't fall over. Now, the body buck that he is reusing is, of course, the Alan Scott Green Lantern body buck, as you can see. And I don't think it's a problem. I think it's fine in this case, because honestly, for an android character like this, what other body buck would you use for this, right? So sometimes reuse is not completely bad. And also, I just noticed something. They retooled the legs down here with the boots. Yeah, so at least they did that. I almost thought it was the same thing. I forgot that his boots look different. So yeah, in this case, you know, at least they did some retooling right there. And of course, a different head sculpt, different paint. So not a bad reuse. Here he is next to another member of the Justice League that I don't know if he's ever interacted with. You got the question? They go good together. Pretty cool. Here he is next to Power Girl for fun. And she does not want to stand on this table. As you can see, she's taller than Red Tornado. Way too tall. And last but not least, here he is next to the Silver Age Superman figure. And I have to say, I like this. I like the fact that this Superman just fits in with some of these comic book designs that we have gotten in the past. And Red Tornado here goes well with Superman. So, awesome. And that is all the comparisons for today's video. And that is our look at the Red Tornado figure. If you found today's review informative, give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, you can. You don't have to. In the end of the day, I make these videos for fun. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.